Time now for the Sunday Talk. Tonight, the politics of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Backroom meetings, targeted attacks, and lots of money to his rivals' campaigns. The Republican establishment tried it all, and none of it could stop him. So, when he became the last man standing last week, nobody knew how the brass would respond.
We will build a wall.
A total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
What should the law be on abortion?
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah.
During the primaries, many senior Republicans openly ridiculed Trump's ideas.
The bullying, the greed, the showing off, the misogyny.
I just really believe that the Republican Party has been conned here.
We are not electing an entertainer-in-chief.
But as Trump's support solidified, some started to cave.
There is no one who is better prepared to provide America with the strong leadership that it needs, both at home and around the world, than Donald Trump.
This week, all eyes were on Trump as he met with House Leader Paul Ryan, who only weeks ago refused to endorse Trump.
I'm just not ready to do that at this point. I'm not there right now.
But after the closed-door meeting, Ryan said this.
I think we had a very encouraging meeting. I actually had a very pleasant exchange with him.
Trump is now changing his tone, too. That ban on Muslims?
It's a temporary ban. It hasn't been called for yet. Nobody's done it.
Abortion?
At this moment, the laws are set, and I think we have to leave it that way.
And maybe even the wall.
Things are negotiable. I'll be honest with you. You know, I'll make the wall 2 feet shorter or something.
I'm joined by our panelists. Jonathan Kaye is editor-in-chief at Walrus Magazine. Tasha Story is a columnist with the National Post and iPolitics. And Louise Story is from Politico. She joins us from Washington tonight. So all political groupies are probably dying to know what went on in that room between Donald Trump and Paul Ryan. And Louisa, you probably have a real idea of what happened. But John, I'll start with you. It's almost more fun to imagine scenarios. What's your favorite scene?
Yeah, this is the realm of pure fantasy. But I mean, for me, I just assume it was something like, Donald, just give me something I can use, some pretext to support you, talk about how you love Israel, say how much you hate abortions. Maybe we could pose with guns and go shoot something together. Like, give me something I can use as a pretext to tell people that you're a changed man and that, you know, some fig leaf so that I can keep a straight face when I pretend to endorse you.
Tasha, your imagination?
I just say Trump saying, you know what, come spend a week at Mar-a-Lago. It's all forgiven. It's all good, Paul. And Paul Ryan, though, probably also both of them trying to figure out, especially Paul Ryan, how to save face in this situation. Because, you know, yes, Trump is in the driver's seat, but at the same time, he still needs the Republican establishment to come in line, at least before the convention, to have an organized, well-run convention. So he needs people like Paul Ryan on side.
So, Louisa, you've actually spoken to people who have spoken to people who were in the room. What is your sense of what happened in there?
Well, it's a funny story. So Trump, they were both supposed to show up with one aide each, and Trump brought an entire entourage of people. So Paul Ryan, the most senior Republican in Washington, the savior that the establishment is looking toward, brought in a few aides. And then for the rest of the meeting, according to our reporting at Politico, Paul Ryan talked a lot, and Donald Trump listened. And Paul Ryan came with charts and graphs as the wonk that he likes to pride himself in being. And he talked a lot about fiscal policy. He talked a lot about the debt and the deficit, which has been something he's quite fixated on. And as you may know, Donald Trump has a tax plan that conservatives estimate would put a $10 trillion new hole in the government finances. So I'm sure he talked about that. They also talked about abortion. They talked about a number of issues that they hope to find common ground on. That was the theme of this meeting. Where can we agree? Let's set aside the things that you don't want to compromise on. You'll probably not backtrack from the wall, but what are the areas where we can agree, and where can Republicans mold him? If you remember back at the beginning of the campaign, for example, he talked about being neutral between Israelis and Palestinians. And then he came back, he got his talking points, and he became suddenly a staunch ally of Israel. So are there other areas where he could do that, whether it's on tax policy, on his remarks on abortion, or elsewhere, where they can mold him and bring him into the fold and start to really line the party up behind him. And so far, that seems to be where they're heading. And nobody expects Paul Ryan to turn on Donald Trump unless something explodes. It's more likely they'll have more meetings and they'll come to some kind of common ground and an eventual endorsement.
And that's obviously not what was expected even just a few weeks ago, Tasha. So, I mean, you're the only true blue conservative here. And you have mocked Trump.
I have.
What would you do now if you were an American Republican?
I'd probably hold my nose and vote for him. I would, because given the alternative, which would be Hillary Clinton as the Democratic nominee, I wouldn't be able to stomach that. And I think that is a lot, that's one of the strengths Donald Trump has, is who his rival is. A lot of the party is uncomfortable with him. He sits well with a lot of independents or independents who might lean Republican, but the hardcore Republicans, the Mitt Romney supporters of the establishment, their real fear is Hillary Clinton. And that is why I think, as Louise has said, there will be an attempt to soften his edges, bring him into the fold, and I think de-emphasize some of the things like the wall that were such a big part of his early conversation, move him towards areas where more Republicans are comfortable with him.
Do you see him being reined in, John?
I don't see him being reined in, but I'm going to call out Tasha because I say if you're a conservative, you vote for Hillary Clinton. You know, as your former editor, Tasha, I edited numerous columns, you know, free trade, free flow of goods and services across the border. Donald Trump is one of the most protectionist candidates that the United States has ever had.
I don't know if that's going to last. I don't know if that's going to last.
Well, look,
I don't.
If you're going to endorse him based on what he might say next week, that's another story.
It changes all the time.
But he's a complete protectionist, and you know, it's especially as Canadians, it's incredible what he said, and that's something he can't backtrack from because that, especially in the Rust Belt, New England, that's been at the core of his support.
Hillary Clinton is against Uber. She's against the sharing economy. She's against a lot of entrepreneurship and a lot of ideas as well.
Trump has come out against NAFTA. Who comes out against NAFTA in 2016? Trump has done that. So to my mind, he's not a conservative. Yeah.
So, Louisa, this is what Ryan and company are trying. They're trying to mold him into more of a conservative.
Yeah.
Will that work? Like, who has the upper hand here?
Well, right. So he's made it clear he won't change his tone. He won't change his persona. He says this is what has got him this far. But I think what John is pointing out, there is certainly a strain of conservatives who are saying never Trump. They're looking around for a third-party candidate to run. That's not going so well. Apparently, Mitt Romney is involved in this effort. But so far, people are backing off. And I think what was very interesting this weekend, 11 states held their state conventions. These are the people choosing the actual delegates who will go to the convention. And according to our reporting, they're all Trump people. The leaders in the states are saying we need to now rally around Trump. So he certainly seems to have the upper hand. Nobody wants a civil war. They'll be looking to him, for example, to say what kind of Supreme Court nominees or judges he would nominate. That'll be very important to the Republican Party. So he'll be looking probably to throw them a few bones as well.
And yet the party, Tasha, has, I mean, they have the machine. He paid for his campaign to date, but an election is a huge affair. They have the party machine, a lot of money. Is he not influenceable to some?
Well, I don't think anyone can rein him in apart from himself. And I think he will also come to the realization, as you mentioned, there's an organizational aspect to getting elected. And you need people on the ground taking people to the polls. You need people keeping track of polls. You need robocall schemes and setups everywhere to find out what voters are thinking. He needs those bodies. He needs staff and people who are willing to do that. And he has an army of Trumpites, but he also needs to convince a lot of the people who have been involved in campaigns traditionally to come out and do that kind of work. So he needs the organization of the Republican Party, even if the Republican Party itself right now obviously has trouble rallying in some cases around him.
But then, do the people who vote for him abandon him? Like, how do you shift?
Yeah.
See, you know, Wendy, this is a good spot to say, I don't know why people are asking me my opinion on Trump, because like every pundit in North America, I wrote a column 4 months ago about how this wouldn't last. Such a bozo.
You were a Rubio guy.
People are smart.
Yeah, you like Rubio.
You know what? That's in the past. But the point is that
Marco.
I said people are too smart for this guy. This is a completely transient phenomenon. And it wasn't just me. It's just everybody wrote the same column. And now the months pass, and these same pundits are, you know, they're back on the air trying to explain whether his appeal will last. I actually don't know. I think we are reaching the depths of voter hypocrisy and ignorance in a way that just can't be predicted. He does stuff and people don't even remember it a week later. You know, Howard Dean screamed and people remembered it for a decade. This guy, he slams women, he slams Muslims, he slams handicapped people, disabled people. I mean, that is, to my mind, was the worst. And a week later, it was out of the headlines.
He's the Family Guy constituency. He's the Archie Bunker constituency. Whether we like to admit it or not, there are a lot of people in America, and probably a lot of people in Canada too, who share views that many people would find distasteful and disagree, but they feel comfortable. Yeah, and they feel comfortable because it's there.
I think it's interesting, though. We can talk about the racism, the xenophobia, but he does open a line of attack for Republicans that has never been open to them before. And you mentioned trade, and that's one area where he can say, you know, he thinks NAFTA has caused carnage, and that resonates with a lot of people in the Rust Belt, in the Midwest, in some manufacturing centers, several of which are presidential swing states. He's also attacked Republicans over the Iraq War, and the Iraq War is hugely unpopular across the United States electorate. And he's able to say, Hillary Clinton, you voted for this, and I criticized it. So it's a very interesting, it's not just that they love his persona, that he's this entertainer in chief, but he is actually bringing a critique to Republican voters that nobody else was able to give them before. So I'll be very interested to see how that plays out.
So was that the ultimate calculation then, Tasha, that the part of the establishment has just decided he might actually be able to win? Because before they were afraid of losing their seats on his ticket.
Yes, and I think that he speaks to a populist element, and that is what Louise just mentioned, these issues that many people, in fact, he has really high numbers in areas where people are unemployed.
But can he beat Hillary Clinton? Is that?
I think he can. I don't, you know, the election is too early to call, obviously, but I think he has a chance to do that, depending obviously on how her campaign goes too. We can't predict at this stage, and all of us have been wrong, to be frank, about how he would do, but I think that he has a chance to do so.
Last quick point to you, John.
What's telling is that when pollsters call people on the phone and say who you're going to vote for, Hillary Clinton wins by a wide margin. Online, where it's more anonymous, Trump is more even, because a lot of people do secretly support Trump, even though they're ashamed of it. So that's what we've got here, someone who they're ashamed of voting for this guy, but they just might do it.
Well, we've all been wrong for so long. Let's probably keep happening. Louisa, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
And thanks to you guys.